Journalist and political analyst Marcus Kolga, and he's in Toronto, Canada. Welcome to the News Hour. What do you think is going to happen in court tomorrow? He's facing 3.5 years in prison.
Well, that's a very good question. Vladimir Putin is in a very tough position right now. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Alexei Navalny, as your earlier report demonstrated, has really inspired a massive movement, pro-democracy movement, an anti-corruption movement in Russia. The question is, will these demonstrations die down if Navalny is in fact released tomorrow, or whether Putin believes that he can quell the demonstrations by keeping him in prison? It's hard to say. I mean, this is now the second week in a row where tens of thousands of Russians have taken to the streets, braving minus 50-degree weather in places like Siberia. I think the sustained numbers this past weekend demonstrates that these demonstrations may not be going anywhere soon. And, I would presume that if it is announced that Navalny will be held for another 3.5 years, there are additional charges that could keep him in prison even longer. I think the reaction to that will be explosive, given what we've seen the past 2 weekends.
And President Putin is powerful. Why is he scared, or is he scared of Navalny?
Well, look, Vladimir Putin had an opportunity back in 2012 to leave office democratically. He chose not to. He has remained there and has actually changed the constitution that would allow him to remain in power until as far as 2036. Vladimir Putin has indicated that he has no intention of leaving office voluntarily. And the Russian people are clearly not supporting this decision. Young Russians, especially young Russians, are looking to the West. They want living standards like there are in the Western world. They're currently not there in Russia. We have a generation, almost 2 generations, that have grown up under Vladimir Putin. Not knowing democracy. They're demanding change. Vladimir Putin sees this, and the fact that these tens of thousands of protesters, again, many of them young, are braving the sort of threat of repression and violent repression on top of that. I mean, there were some images from yesterday's protests where Putin stormtroopers cornered a group of young protesters. Some of them didn't look much older than 12, 13 years old, and they began beating them and arrested them. Those sorts of images, when they are projected back to the Russian people, I'm not sure that they're going to stand for this. So Putin is clearly frightened about where these protests might be headed. And then given the violence, it also further demonstrates that.
And Marcus, is there anything the international community can do? We've heard so many words of condemnation, even Chancellor Angela Merkel calling his poisoning attempted murder with a nerve agent. These are very strong words, and yet nothing. Everything just continues business as normal.
Well, that's a very good point. There has been indeed a strong international condemnation of the attempted assassination. There's also been some condemnation of the crackdown on the protesters. But yet we haven't seen action. Navalny's team put out a list of 8 names of oligarchs. These are people who have enriched themselves over the past 20 years while Vladimir Putin has been president. That list, they are asking Western governments to place sanctions on these individuals. Now, these are the individuals that keep Vladimir Putin in power. So the Western world, the European Union, the United States, Canada, and others can act together to apply sanctions on these individuals, because that's one way that we can definitely apply pressure on the regime. And Russian pro-democracy activists have also called on this. Just last week, there was a joint press conference with Vladimir Kara-Murza, Garry Kasparov, Michael Khodorkovsky, and Bill Browder, all of them saying that placing sanctions on Russian officials is the most effective way that the Western world can push back and demonstrate to Vladimir Putin that they will not stand for this sort of repression. and to stand up for these with these protesters in Russia.
And Marcus, I'm sure you've watched the documentary about an alleged palace belonging to President Putin in the Black Sea. How much of these protests are linked to that video made by Navalny and his team?
Well, it's not just that one video. Alexei Navalny, along with Boris Nemtsov, who was another opposition leader who also exposed Putin's corruption, this group of pro-democracy and anti-corruption activists have been publishing these sorts of exposés already for the past decade. And through those exposés, this movement has been growing, and certainly Navalny's exposés, this latest one about this massive billion-dollar mansion that has been built on the southern coast, or the Black Sea coast of Russia. These are clearly inspiring. Again, Russians are looking to the West, and they're wondering why their living standards are not anywhere near what they are in Europe, and when they see images of these grand palaces and this massive scale of corruption, surely it's inspiring. It's enraging these normal average Russians across Russia. This isn't, and it's just not in the urban centers, but across Russia in 100 cities. These protests have emerged. They're demanding changes. They want a better living standard. They want democracy. They want an end to this corruption. So, Navalny's work in exposing it is certainly playing a big role in inspiring these protests.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your time with us, Marcus Kolga. Appreciate it.